Engine Performance 1, Test 1, from the textbook chapters 1 and 2. A lot of times you're going to find an interesting thing about NATEV tasks on engine performance and engine repair. The first bunch of tasks and a lot of the information is one and the same because the way the engine is put together, the way it's built, and the way it's operating on the basic foundation of it is basically going to be tied into the engine performance. But let's first talk about some shop stuff. Infections that can be transmitted by blood are called what? Blood-borne pathogens. Some of the wiring under the hood of a late model vehicle is encased in bright orange covering. This indicates what?
High voltage electrical.
High voltage electrical system. That is, when we say high voltage, we mean hybrid level, like 200 to 300 to 400 volts, whatever. All right. What's the maximum pressure that should be used with compressed air nozzles? Engine Performance 1, Test 1. What's the maximum pressure that should be used with compressed air nozzles?
45 psi.
You know what they say on the, it says 30 psi. That's what they say. Now, if you can find me a shop anywhere that uses nozzles that only have 30 psi going to them, and I'll pat you on the back and give you a Daniel Webster's Igor, because just about everybody just pops them right into the hose. But one of the things you don't want to do is you don't want to blow air on your skin because it can get in your blood and your heart loses its prime and you go down. You had it to start with. What happened? You know. Engine Performance Test 1 and 2. 1 and 2. You got 1 and 2. That's Test 2. Let's see. You got Test 2, but you don't have Test 1? All right.
I got Test 2.
Yeah, you got Test 2. All right, hang on to the, put these answers down on the back of your page and I'll give you a copy of the test when we're done here, okay? In other words, write down the answers so you can mark, so you can transfer them. But everybody gets the, I don't know if somebody's been jacking around with a thing, but everybody got the same packet of, everybody got the same pack of stuff, you know. It's real interesting to me. And I have trouble with high school guys too. All right, just get you, you know, so 1 was D, 2 was C, 3 was D. Which air impact drive size is most commonly used? Half-inch drive. However, you're going to find nowadays in just about every line technician's toolbox, you're going to find 1/4-inch impact, you're going to find a 3/8 impact, you're going to find a 1/2-inch impact, and if you're working in the, you know, in the big truck area, you'll find a, you know, 1-inch and all that, 3/4-inch and 1-inch. Okay, technician A says a clicker tap torque wrench should be used calibrated regularly. Should be and that's the one that you screw the, not the split beam. The split beam kind has got the little knob on the side. You don't have to, you know, they don't, you have to calibrate it, but they're not as sensitive to loser calibration as long as you don't bounce them off the floor or use them for a hammer or something. Now, they're not as bad loser calibration as the ones that you got to screw up. Now, how many of you know the one that you turn the handle and set the torque, you're supposed to go back to 0 with it whenever you put it back in your toolbox. If you leave it on 100 foot-pound, it's going to lose its calibration. The one on the bottom, the one where you turn the handle and it goes up, we got, you know, some of them like that. But anyway, you always put it back to 0 before you put it back in the box. And you know, of course, some people say, hey, I didn't mind, so I don't care. Now remember, Technician A and Technician B questions are true-false questions, like 2 true-false questions. And that's how you're going to determine the answer. A lot of people don't like those because they make them think a little too hard. Technician B says to store clicker torque wrenches at their minimum setting. That's what I was just saying right there. So that's a C. In the first character of the VIN, an S was an S. Where was a vehicle made if the first character of the VIN was an S?
D.
That's a, what'd y'all say? Y'all say D?
D.
That's going to be England, right? The 10th character represents the year of the vehicle. And if the 10th character is a Y, what year is it?
D.
2000, that's right. Now, everybody know how that VIN number stuff works?
Mm-hmm.
They started in 1980 with A. It starts in 1980 with A, although some 80 models didn't use that 17-digit VIN. And it don't matter if it's a Volkswagen or a Volvo or a Porsche or a Mercedes. In the United States, if you bought it here, if it was marketed to sell here, the 10th digit is going to tell you the year model. So it started in 1980, they went all the way to 2000 using the alphabet. They did not use I, O, Q, U, or C. Or Z, I'm sorry, not Z. They didn't use I, O, Q, U, or Z. And then they started in 2001, it started 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then when they started over in 2010, it was A again. You got me? So from 2010 up, you're going to be A, B, C again. Well, from 2001 to 2009, it's 1 through 9. As a matter of fact, it's on that door. See that? See our Quincy? See that little sticker on the door with them right over there? See that thing on the door? That right there tells you the code. The 10th digit, if you can look at that 10th digit, you'll know what year model that car is. If you open the door and you look on that sticker, you may not be right. Because sometimes it may have been one that was mid-model year. So you may say, well, this was built the 8th month of 2010, and it turns out it's the 2011 because they started building the 2011s in the 7th month. And there's no clear delineation there, but that letter will not lie to you. All right, so the vehicle safety certification label includes what?
All of these.
That's on D, all of it. It's got the VIN, the gross vehicle weighting, and month and year of manufacturer. Now, on some of the cars, like on Ford cars, on some of them, it will also have the tire pressures. And that's the label in there on the door. I mean, on the inside of the door. Which character of the VIN indicates the year, again?
Yeah.
Which character of the VIN indicates the engine code? The 8th digit. What's a free internet site that contains case studies of problems with successful repairs?
All of it.
No, actually not all that. It's IATN. IATN. You can become a member of IATN. Now, if you don't check the right boxes, let's say you sign up for IATN and you don't check the right boxes about what your levels of expertise are, then you'll open up your email the next morning and have 400 emails. So make sure that you tell them what it is you're prepared to help with. See what I'm saying? Because it's going to send emails to everybody. Like if you go in there and you say, I'm really good in electrical stuff on Cadillacs, that's the only kind of questions you'll get. But if you say, I can do anything, then everybody with a problem, the IATN is going to shoot you an email whenever they send IATN a question. What type notification relates to repairs that are always covered by manufacturer to correct safety or emission-related concern?
TSPs. DA.
That's a recall. Recall. A TSB, actually, if there's enough of them out there, will become a recall later on, possibly. But who knows what the first recall ever put out on a vehicle was? The first recall. Ford Pinto actually had little straps going under there so that if the Pinto got rear-ended, the gas tank would fall off and it would catch fire. So they actually...
What they said a Pinto you do? Explode.
Whenever you run into the back of them, now they had the little keyhole-shaped places where the tank straps went into that keyhole and dropped back, to the fin. And if you hit it, it would push it forward and it would let it fall out of there. And it was, if they got hit very hard. Have you ever seen that stupid little movie called Top Secret? It was so funny. It came out a long time ago. There was a little takeoff on that, and there was this pickup truck that almost stopped rolling, and it just barely did bump the back of this Tempo, and it goes boom! It blew all the pieces. All right, but all right, that's a comical, funny movie that made fun of everybody. Let's see. Technician A says most factory service manuals cover several years in models. Technician B says most aftermarket service manuals only cover 1 year in model of vehicle. And that is actually what, neither one of those guys is right. Now what we're going to look at here, aftermarket service manuals, they usually say from 86 to 90 or something like that. But do you know how the old shop manuals, and I used to have a whole bunch of ancient shop manuals over there that I actually donated to the library because they were from way back in years we don't work on. Before you had the serial number to tell you universally what year model it was, you know how they had the things in the shop manual where you could identify what year model car you were working on? They had a picture of the front of the car because every year they changed the car to look a different way. The headlights, you remember back until about 1975 or maybe 76, every year without fail, with almost no exceptions at all, they would actually change the look of the car. The tail lights, the headlights, the shape of the body, and all that. If you think about it, if you go back, as far as like say, go back to the early 50s, a 50, now pickups were different. Pickups looked the same for several years. But cars, like you could look at a 60 model Chevrolet, it didn't look like a 59 and it didn't look like a 61. A 61 Chevrolet looked different from a 62. Now a 62 and a 63 look real similar, but a 64 looked different, and a 65 looked totally different. You got me? 66 look different, 67. I can look, and this is Ford and Chevrolet and everybody alike, Chrysler, all of them like that. All right, now then, but they actually would have a picture, a line art picture in the shop manual of all of these different cars, and they have a picture of what it looked like, so you could look at the picture and compare it to what you had and tell what your model, which one it was. What kind of screwdriver can also be used as a chisel? You're not supposed to use a screwdriver as a chisel. Okay, how many people in here can honestly say that you have never used a screwdriver as a chisel?
I can't see. I done broke a hammer on a lot of stuff.
Yeah. No, just about every mechanic, he may have a cheap tool, he may have a cheap screwdriver he's used as a chisel, but everybody that's ever picked up tools has had a screwdriver they beat on with it. Because you're not thinking about, I mean, if I'm sitting here and I got a job I got to do, and I think I can get it done with a hammer and a screwdriver, I'm going to pick me up. You know, I may be wearing some safety glasses when I do it, but I'm going to pick that sucker up and I'm going to whack on it. Of course, it drives the thing back up in the handle, but some of them are actually designed, you know, so that they know you're going to hit them. They got to have metal going all the way through. Okay, refer to the picture below. What's the correct name of the tool?
Combination wrench.
That's a combination wrench. All right. So does it turn combinations or something? Like what you open a safe with or something? Or what's
It's
it?
got two different types. It's got an open end, and then it's got a.
It's got the same size on both ends, but one's a box and one's an open. Okay. What's the proper name for the second tool? What is that?
Flare nut wrench.
A flare nut wrench. Flare nut wrenches are the ones that you. What do you use a flare nut wrench for?
Put them on brake lines, pipes, nuts.
Power steering lines and all that. It grips it sort of like a box end, so that you can. It grips it like a box end, so that you can actually get the thing broke loose without rounding it off. Now, why is that necessary?
Because
those-
you don't wanna keep.
Well, those nuts aren't as strong or aren't as tough because they're usually a little thinner, and they're not as tough as a regular nut, and so you'll egg shape them. If you try to use a regular wrench, you'll turn into an egg shape. And all that. Technician A says wet asbestos is known as a hazardous waste. Technician B says dry asbestos is known as a solid waste. Who's right about that? Number 17. What do you got? That's D. Technician A says brake fluid is hazardous after it's been contaminated with metals from the brake system. Technician B says dispose of used brake fluid in a special container. Who's right about that? Both of them. I've got a 5-gallon bucket full of old brake fluid out there. I was talking to Safety Clean people about taking that 5-gallon bucket of brake fluid and disposing of it because they're a hazardous waste disposal outfit. And they wanted some big monster money for that. So I said, I think I'll just let that thing sit under the bench for a while, you know. All right, so, I mean, you can't pour it out on the ground. You can't pour it with your waste oil. You know, it's different. It's a different kind of waste. You just can't mix it with the others. All right, so Technician A says used brake fluid can be poured down a sewage drain. Well, we know better than that. Technician B says brake fluid can be mixed with used engine oil for recycling. We don't. Neither one of those guys are right. That's what I was just talking about. Don't go there. Okay, there's give page 1 to him. Give page 1 to Quincy, which is not a criteria the EPA uses to define used oil.
Use.
Color.
What about color? Yeah, they're not going to look at the color of the oil and tell. Okay, which of these is not true about used oil?
B.
What did you say, B? It cannot be mixed with used antifreeze. But I'm going to tell you what's weird about that. This is interesting to me. I was talking to the guy that pumps out the chemicals the other day, the Safety Clean guy, and I says, what if somebody drains some antifreeze in here or something, you know? He says, it don't matter. You know, so I don't know. I mean, used to, if there was any antifreeze in it when they were buying the oil, you know, and our oil drum over here is getting full. I told him the other day that oil, you know, that Bumblebee that we put our oil in, that thing was within a few gallons of being full. They're supposed to be coming pump it out of there. Let me see. Technician A says major sources of chemical dangers are from solvents containing chlorinated hydrofluorocarbons, which we don't use here. You notice that our parts washer has got hot water chemical part washer over there, and you notice how good that thing works? When you had that valve cover off at Chevrolet, it just washing that old brown stuff right off the valve cover. It's really good stuff.
You gotta clean the dirt off of them first and then wash them.
Yeah, it's clear as a bell. I mean, it's just as clean whenever you get through it. Technician B says solvents can be reclaimed so they can be reused, and that's C. Technician A says solvents with a flash point below 140 degrees are combustible. Technician B says solvents with a flash point above 140 degrees are flammable. What do you about that? That's D, neither one. We were cleaning injectors one time on a Ford Tempo, and the exhaust in that thing, it was running a little hotter than it should have been when we were cleaning the injectors because we had it at a high idle and it, you know, running the chemical through the injectors and all that. And whenever the helper that I had with me popped the lines off of that injector cleaning machine, that gas spilled down there and it hit the exhaust and it caught fire. I mean, the exhaust was hot enough to where it caught fire to that gasoline. And what do you do? What do you do when something like that catches fire suddenly?
You grab the fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what he did was he was jumping up and down going, hoo, hoo, hoo. And I says, Mark, there's a fire extinguisher right here, watch. We put it out. I said, that's how you take care of that, you know.
Not fire is where it melts.
Well, it was the other thing, he was, this same guy, he had a tendency to get excited about stuff. And he was, there's this guy come pulling in here he started up with pulling in his Bronco 2, little Bronco 2, like a little Ranger, except it's like an SUV. And when he switched it off, you heard a noise under the hood. And some smoke started coming from between the fenders and the hood. And he goes, open the hood, open the hood. So he popped the hood and he raised it up and fire went, ah! Ooh, he lets it close. He said, open it again. I wish I had a video camera of that because he was jumping the same way, you know, whenever a fire started. But one day I went out there to start a car, to work on a car that wouldn't start. And what do you do? What do you check first? Engine performance now, this is important. What do you check first? You check spark first. You don't check fuel pressure and have fuel go on the top of the motor and then check spark, because then you're going to set fire to the motor, right? Use your pumpkin. So anyway, I checked the spark, and then I checked the fuel pressure, and there was a spark jumping out of a spark plug wire or something, and I was out here on the service lot, and I was like 100 yards from the shop, and all of a sudden, you know, I'm bumping it with my starter, but and all of a sudden, a fire starts, and I blow it out. It comes back. You know how they do? You blow it out. It comes back. I blow it out. I think I blew myself out of wind blowing that fire out. I couldn't say help because I was out of wind. I couldn't go and get a fire extinguisher because it was too far away. Finally, I got to where it didn't come back. I thought I was going to pass out. But it gets really exciting. Okay, now then, let's see. Technician A says solvents currently in use in a parts washer must be labeled, and that one there's got labels on it over there. Technician B says Safety Clean is a vendor that recycles and disposes of used solvent. And B is right about that. I like to know what solvent is in there. That says that according to this, according to the answer key, that first one is not right. But it seems to me like it ought to be the law that you need to know what's in there, you know, particularly because of the most material data safety sheet stuff. I don't know if that is right or not, but B is what they're wanting. Technician A says lead acid batteries may be disposed of in landfills. You don't do that because they're lead. Technician B says all automotive battery retailers must post a sign with a recycling symbol visible to customers, and that B is basically going to be the one that's right on that. Technician A says to fill gas containers completely full in order to reduce vapor formation. Technician B says all gasoline containers should be red in color. Who's right about that? That's 26. Okay, and actually they had me put a sign on them gas thing, you know, that whenever NATF people came that said flammable liquid or whatever, which is not an acceptable method of disposing used tires. Which is not an acceptable method. Don't put them in a landfill. You're not supposed to burn them anymore either. You know, used to, whenever you was going to burn a bunch of brush, you'd put a tire and set fire to it. They don't want you. You're not supposed to do it anymore. Shh. Have you been doing that, Willie?
I just did?
Yep.
No, I didn't do that.
What's your address? All right. Okay. When handling an airbag, what precautions should be taken?
Let's see.
Place an airbag module facing upward. This is the one you pull out of the steering wheel. Don't put it facing downward. Why won't you put it facing downward? If it lights off, it's going to take off like a rocket. It may go 5,000 feet in the air. Or if it may jump off in one direction or the other and hit you in the face or something like that. So always carry an airbag pointing away from your body. Boom. So if it lights off. It ain't going to light off when you're carrying it anyway, but this is like a piece of dynamite, right? Wear protective gloves when handling a deployed airbag. You know, it can irritate your skin a little bit. All of these is, and then finally, let's flip on the other side. A container of liquid has the following label. What are the handling requirements for the liquid? Yes. Huh? What's that?
27. Looks tires.
No, basically the only thing that you're not supposed to do, according to that, is throw them in a landfill. Is that? Now, if you burn them in a cement kiln, everything's contained. You got me? Okay, so, all right. So what you got right here is number 29. You got the container of liquid has the following label. What are the requirements, the handling requirements for that liquid? Safety glasses, gloves, ignites above 100 degrees, minimal toxicity. Safety glasses, no flames, rinse with water. Safety glasses, gloves, highly toxic, rinse with water. Gloves, safety glasses, rinse with water, non-flammable. That's a bunch of choices that you really have to parse, isn't it? Basically, that's A, safety glasses, gloves, ignites above 100 degrees, minimal toxicity. Look in your book for the key to that. Number 30, technician A says, a visual inspection can determine if brake linings contain asbestos. Seriously?
No.
Technician B says it's okay to blow brake dust with compressed air. The very first time when I started taking it, when I was teaching brake, give that to Quincy, Alex. But when I was first out here, I was in a classroom, the very first day of brake class. One of the first things I said, now, do not ever take an air blower and blow the brake dust with compressed air. And the first day, there's a guy went out there and blew that stuff all over the place. And I said, what in the world are you thinking about? He must not have been listening or something. You know, that big cloud of brake dust down there. But the diameter, let's go ahead and stop on this one right here and jump into